gripped her ancestral blade to safeguard her. Unaware, he now faced the prospect of becoming her spouse. The heavens opened, unleashing torrents across the dueling grounds of Kethalar, transforming the somber gray stone into a slick, reflective surface mirroring the turbulent amethyst sky above. Riker Voss observed from the meager shelter of an adjacent overhang, his broad back hunched against the pervasive chill. His intention had been a brief stop on this remote world, merely a quick refueling before continuing to his subsequent assignment. However, the tempest had grounded all interstellar traffic. Now he found himself an unwilling spectator to what appeared to be a form of ritualistic combat among the local inhabitants. The assembled throng of aliens, their skin a vibrant violet hue, formed a dense circle around two combatants. Their hair, a striking silver, gleamed even in the prevailing gloom. Their hushed pronouncements rose and fell like the ocean's rhythm, a language his translator implant struggled to fully comprehend. "Outsider," a gravelly voice intoned beside him, "you should not tarry here. This is a matter of the clan." Riker glanced down at the aged alien elder, noting the intricate silver adornments etched upon his violet skin. "Just waiting out the storm," he explained. "My vessel requires another hour before she is prepared for flight." The elder's eyes, solid black orbs devoid of pupil or iris, narrowed. "Then wait elsewhere. What transpires here is not for foreign eyes." But Riker's attention had already been drawn back to the ongoing duel. One combatant, unmistakably female by human standards, moved with remarkable agility despite her evident fatigue. Her adversary, a male nearly twice her stature, pressed his advantage with unyielding persistence. The female warrior's silver hair, longer than any Riker had observed among the locals, whipped around her as she deflected a savage blow. "Who are they?" he inquired, disregarding the elder's caution. The elder sighed. "The female is Lethe, last scion of a once great house. The male is Dreyer Keth, champion of the Ascendant clan. He fights to claim her family's ancestral lands." He paused, then added with stark finality, "And should she prevail, she will not win. Her clan has declined too greatly. This is merely a formality." As if to underscore his pronouncement, Dreyer delivered a forceful strike that sent Lethe sprawling across the rain-slicked stone. Her form-fitting black combat attire, accented with elaborate silver straps that traced her slender silhouette, was now rent in several places, revealing deep gashes from which indigo blood seeped. The crowd roared its approval as Dreyer circled his prone opponent. Lethe struggled to rise, her hand still clutching her clan sword, a magnificent blade with ornate engravings that seemed to emanate an inner luminescence despite the dim light. "Yield, daughter of nothing," Dreyer's voice boomed across the arena. "Your father's blade deserves a stronger hand. I will embrace death before I relinquish my family's honor." Lethe spat, though a tremor of pain underscored her words. Something in her defiance resonated with Riker. He had witnessed too many underdogs crushed by those in positions of power. It was a recurring narrative across half the star systems in this sector. Before he could reconsider, he was moving, shouldering his way through the throng. Dreyer raised his weapon for a decisive strike. "No! Halt!" Lethe cried out, not at her opponent, but at Riker. It was too late. As Dreyer's blade descended, Riker snatched Lethe's fallen sword from beside her and intercepted the blow with a resounding clang of metal. The impact sent a jolt up his arm to his shoulder, but he held his ground, his muscular frame absorbing the shock. A collective gasp swept through the assembled onlookers. Dreyer recoiled, his four eyes widening in astonishment. "This is not your contention, human," he snarled. "It seems ignoble to strike down someone already vanquished," Riker retorted, adjusting his grip on the weapon. It felt oddly warm in his grasp, almost sentient. "You fool," Lethe whispered, her voice a mixture of horror and disbelief. "Do you grasp the gravity of your actions?" Before Riker could reply, the elder he had previously encountered pushed through the crowd, accompanied by several others attired in elaborate ceremonial garments. They regarded Riker with expressions ranging from shock to indignation, and most disturbingly, amusement. "The blade has been claimed," the elder announced, his voice carrying across the now silent arena. "By ancient decree, unbroken since the world's inception, he who wields the clan's sword in defense of its bearer becomes bound to that bearer in the sacred rite of marriage. Riker blinked. What now? You have claimed the right to be Lethe and Varen's husband, the Elder continued implacably. The duel is adjourned. The rite of bonding shall now commence. Riker looked down at Lethe, who regarded him with an expression suggesting she was torn between gratitude and the urge to impale him with the very weapon he had just employed to save her. I was merely attempting to assist, he said weakly. Assist, she hissed, struggling to her feet. You have now irrevocably tied yourself to a dying clan on a world you know nothing about. The blade makes the choice, human, and it has selected you. There is no reprieve from this for either of us. As the implications settled upon him, Riker felt the weight of 100 alien gazes upon him. He had faced pirates, corporate assassins, and hostile fauna across a dozen worlds, but nothing had prepared him for this. He had landed on this planet for a routine refueling and somehow found himself betrothed to a woman he had not even exchanged words with. Well, he finally stated, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes, this will undoubtedly make for an extraordinary narrative, assuming I survive long enough to recount it. You cannot possibly expect me to proceed with this, Riker muttered as he followed Lethe through the labyrinthine passages of what she had indicated was her clan's ancestral stronghold, a colossal edifice carved directly into the mountainside. Despite her injuries, Lethe moved with purposeful elegance, though Riker noted how she occasionally steadied herself against the stone walls. The indigo blood from her wounds had congealed into dark scabs against her violet skin. What I expect is inconsequential, she replied without turning. The blade has chosen you. That is all that matters. A sword cannot choose anything. It's an inanimate object. This statement caused her to halt and turn, her silver hair swirling like a curtain. Closer inspection revealed that her eyes were not entirely black as he had initially perceived. Tiny flecks of silver shimmered within them like distant stars. The Envar blade has been forged in the blood of my ancestors for 16 generations, she stated, her voice low and intense. It carries the essence of our lineage. When you grasped it in defense of my life, it recognized within you something worthy of perpetuating our line. Riker ran a hand through his short brown hair. Look, where I hail from, betrothal necessitates at least a preliminary acquaintance, perhaps a shared meal, most definitely mutual agreement. Where you originate from is no longer relevant, she interrupted. You are here, and you have invoked ancient law. My clan stands on the precipice of oblivion. Our territories are being encroached upon. Our people are dispersed. That duel was my final opportunity to salvage what little remains of our dignity. A complex emotion flickered across her face. And now, we possess possibilities. Unexpected ones. Before Riker could probe further, they arrived at a set of imposing gates, inlaid with silver patterns that seemed to subtly shift in the subdued illumination. 2 guards stood at attention, their expressions hardening at Riker's appearance. The elders await, one stated, making no effort to conceal his disdain. The chamber beyond was circular, with a domed ceiling revealing the stormy sky through sections of translucent crystal. 7 venerable Keth Valyrians were seated in a semicircular arrangement, their elaborate robes and silver facial markings signifying their elevated status. The central figure, a female whose hair cascaded to the floor around her, raised a gnarled hand as they entered. Approach, daughter of Invorni. Bring your chosen. Lethe straightened despite her injuries and advanced with dignity. Riker followed, acutely aware of how out of place his weather-beaten flight jacket and cargo pants appeared in this formal setting. High Elder Lethe bows, she announced. I present Riker Voss of Earth. A human? The High Elder's voice dripped with scorn. You bring a human before the sacred circle and claim him as your bondmate. I claim nothing, Riker responded. The blade chose. Murmurs rippled through the assembled elders. One male bearing particularly elaborate silver facial markings leaned forward. This is unprecedented. No outsider has ever wielded a clan blade. Perhaps because no outsider has ever been foolish enough to interfere in clan matters, another elder interjected sharply. The High Elder raised her hand for silence. The law is absolute. If the blade accepted his touch in your defense, then the bond is formed. Her gaze, however, shifted to Riker. The question remains whether this human comprehends what he has committed himself to. With all due respect, Riker stepped forward. I do not. I witnessed someone on the verge of being slain, and I intervened. Where I come from, that is simply basic decency. Decency? The High Elder repeated the word as if savoring an unfamiliar taste. An interesting concept, yet irrelevant. The blade does not recognize decency. It recognizes strength, honor, and compatibility of bloodline. Bloodline compatibility? Riker frowned. You mean, yes, human? The blade would not have accepted your touch had your genetic structure been incompatible with the continuation of the Invar line. This is unexpected. A commotion at the chamber entrance interrupted them. Dreyer Keth strode in, flanked by his own retinue. His imposing frame seemed to fill the room with an aura of menace. This charade has continued for far too long, he boomed. The human interfered in sacred combat. The duel was not concluded. The duel became irrelevant the moment he claimed the blade, the High Elder responded coolly. Dreyer's four eyes narrowed to slits. I challenge the validity of this bond. The human knows nothing of our customs. He cannot possibly fulfill the duties of a clan husband. That, the High Elder acknowledged, is a legitimate concern. Lethe stepped forward. By law, he has one full cycle of our moons to prove his worthiness. During this period, he is under clan protection. A cycle? Dreyer laughed harshly. I shall require considerably less time to demonstrate his unsuitability. He turned his gaze to Riker. Human, do you even comprehend the duties you have undertaken? You must defend clan territories, participate in council deliberations, sire strong offspring. Whoa. Let's hit the pause button on that last one, Riker interrupted, eliciting confused looks from everyone except Lethe, whose translator apparently grasped the idiom. The human will be instructed in his duties, Lethe stated firmly, and I will vouch for his capacity to learn. Bold assertions from the daughter of a fallen house, Dreyer sneered. Very well. One cycle, then we shall witness if your human companion can stand as a true clan husband, or if he will retreat to the stars whence he came. After Dreyer stormed out, the High Elder fixed Riker with a penetrating stare. You have much to learn in a very short time, human. Your actions carry consequences beyond your comprehension. The story of my life, Riker muttered. Later, as Lethe guided him to what would apparently be his accommodations, Riker finally posed the question that had been weighing on his mind. Why didn't you simply permit me to depart? You could have informed them. I was unaware of my actions. Lethe stopped, her expression unreadable in the dim corridor. Because the moment you wielded that blade, you became our clan's final hope. Without you, Dreyer would have taken my life today, and the Unvar lineage would have ceased to exist. With you, she hesitated, with you, there is a possibility. A slim one, but more than I possessed this morning. A chance for what, precisely? Her gaze met his, fierce and unyielding. A chance to rebuild, to reclaim what was stolen from us, to ensure that my family's sacrifices were not in vain. She moved closer, close enough that he could detect the unfamiliar fragrance of her skin. You may not have chosen this, Riker Voss, but neither did I. We are bound now by blood and by honor. The sole question is whether you will flee from that bond or embrace it. With that, she turned and continued down the corridor, leaving Riker to ponder what kind of storm he had flown into and whether he had any hope of navigating his way through it. Again, Lethe commanded, her voice echoing through the training chamber. Riker exhaled slowly, raising the practice sword, a weighted replica of the clan blade now housed in a ceremonial chamber. His muscles screamed from 3 hours of continuous drills. Your stance is still incorrect, she circled him critically. Lower your center. Bend your knees more. On Earth, we have this concept called taking a break. Riker grunted but adjusted his posture nonetheless. 5 days had elapsed since the fateful duel. 5 days of intensive cultural and combat instruction that left Riker utterly exhausted. The lunar cycle Lethe had mentioned equated to approximately 28 Earth days, meaning he had just over 3 weeks remaining to attain proficiency in skills that Keth Valyrians dedicated lifetimes to mastering. Breaks are for those who can afford them, Lethe replied, though she moved to a nearby bench and sat, wincing slightly. Her wounds were healing, but not as swiftly as she endeavored to portray. Riker lowered the practice sword. You should be resting as well. Those lacerations were deep. My physical condition is irrelevant compared to the task at hand, which is transforming me into a proper clan husband in record time. He joined her on the bench. Look, I understand that this is paramount to you, but there's a limit to what a human intellect can absorb in a single day. For a moment he anticipated an argument, but instead, she nodded. You are correct. I have been overly zealous in your training. Tell me about your father, Riker suggested, seizing the rare opportunity for a personal exchange. Lethe remained silent for so long that he believed she would not respond. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than he had previously heard it. Theon Naren was the most exceptional swordsman of his era. He led our clan through the border conflicts and forged alliances that ensured our prosperity for decades. Her fingers traced an invisible pattern on the bench. But strength invariably invites challenge. The Kaith clan had always coveted our territories, particularly the crystal mines in the northern regions. What transpired? Poison, she stated flatly. Not honorable combat, not a formal challenge, merely poison administered in his evening repast. By the time I returned from my military service, he was gone, and our clan was in disarray. Drea's father had already seized 2 of our outlying territories. Riker absorbed this information, and no one intervened. Surely there is some form of planetary ordinance. Law! Lethe's laugh was laced with bitterness. The law is straightforward. The strong prevail, the weak perish. Lacking my father's leadership, we were perceived as vulnerable. One by one, our allies abandoned us. So you challenged Drea to reclaim what was lost. She nodded. It was not my most judicious decision. However, it was the sole remaining recourse. A young messenger entered, her silver hair cropped short. Honored Lethe, the Council of 3 Clans requests your presence, and that of your bondmate. Lethe rose abruptly. The council was not scheduled to convene for another 8 days. Clan Keth had called for an emergency session. All houses were mandated to attend. After the messenger departed, Riker raised an eyebrow. I presume this is not auspicious news. It is Dreher's initial maneuver, Lethe confirmed, already moving towards formal attire. He is forcing a public assessment before you are prepared. The council chamber was a vast amphitheater hewn from dark stone. 3 colossal clan banners hung from the ceiling. The silver sword of Invar, now faded, the crimson claw of Keth, vibrant and dominant, and the blue spiral of Thal, the most neutral of the 3 major clans. Hundreds of Keth Valyrians occupied the tiered seating. Riker, dressed in formal attire, felt like an exhibit in an alien menagerie. Remember, Lethe whispered, speak only when directly addressed. Maintain eye contact to demonstrate respect, and keep my hands visible at all times to indicate I am not reaching for a weapon. I was paying attention during the etiquette instruction, Riker finished. At the center of the chamber, elevated on a circular platform, sat the leaders of the 3 major clans. Dreher represented Keth, his massive frame draped in ceremonial armor. Beside him, a serene-looking female represented Clan Thal. And for Clan Invar, Riker whispered. You are looking at her, Lethe replied tightly. With my father deceased, I am the last of our bloodline old enough to sit on the council. The High Elder stood and raised her hands for silence. The Council of 3 Clans is convened at the request of Clan Keth. Who speaks for the petitioners? Dreher rose, his 4 eyes settling on Riker with undisguised contempt. I, Dreher Keth, speak for my clan, and for all who honor our ancient traditions. 5 days ago, an outsider interfered in sacred combat and claimed a clan blade through ignorance rather than right. Now, we are asked to accept this human as a clan husband. He spat the word human as if it were a curse. The law is clear, Lethe countered, her voice firm despite being outnumbered. The blade accepted him. The bond is formed. Clan Invar acknowledges Riker Voss as my rightful husband and a member of our house. A blade cannot choose an outsider who knows nothing of our ways. Dreher slammed his fist on the council table. The Thal representative raised a slender hand. Perhaps we should hear from the human himself. All eyes turned to Riker. He straightened his shoulders, acutely aware that his next words could either bolster or shatter Lethe's standing. "Members of the Council," he began carefully, "I will not feign understanding of all your customs or history. Where I come from, we do not possess clan blades or ritualistic combat, but we do understand honor, loyalty, and the importance of honoring one's word." He paused, meeting Dreyer's hostile gaze. "I did not comprehend what I was agreeing to when I picked up that sword. However, I do not have a habit of abandoning my commitments, even accidental ones." "Fine words," Dreyer sneered, "but words alone prove nothing. If you truly wish to honor our customs, then demonstrate your worth through action, not hollow promises." "What do you propose?" the High Elder inquired. Dreyer's lips curved into a predatory smile. "The trial of 3 challenges. Traditional, binding, and perfectly suited to test an outsider's mettle." Lethe stiffened. "That trial has not been invoked in 7 generations. Perhaps because it has not been necessary until now," Dreyer countered. "Unless your human consort wishes to concede his inadequacy at this very moment." Riker felt Lethe's fingers tighten around his wrist in warning, but he had already endured enough of Dreyer's posturing. "I accept," he stated firmly. The chamber erupted in surprised exclamations. Lethe's fingers dug painfully into his arm. "You do not comprehend what you have just agreed to," she hissed. "Then I suppose you will have to explain it to me," he whispered back. "Because I'm not backing down from this bully." The High Elder raised her hands for silence. "It is decided. The trial of 3 challenges will commence at first light tomorrow. The human Riker Voss will face tests of body, mind, and spirit. Should he falter in any challenge, the bond will be dissolved, and Clan Invar will forfeit all remaining territories to Clan Keth." "What?" Riker turned to Lethe in alarm. "I attempted to caution you," she muttered, her expression grim. As the council adjourned, Dreyer approached them. "Enjoy your final night as a clan husband, human. Tomorrow you will learn the true essence of Keth Valyrian strength." Back in Lethe's chambers, she elucidated the challenges. Physical combat against a champion chosen by Dreyer, a mental trial of strategy and knowledge of their history and laws, and a spiritual pilgrimage through the ancestral memories stored within the clan blade itself. "And I must complete all 3 of these tomorrow." "Yes, and you must succeed in all 3, or everything will be lost." Her voice softened. "I should have explained this prior to now. I was attempting to shield you from the full ramifications of what you'd gotten yourself into." For the first time, Riker perceived an authentic openness in her demeanor. On a sudden impulse, he extended his hand and clasped hers. Her skin was cooler than a human's, yet remarkably soft, and she made no move to withdraw. "I might not grasp the intricacies of your existence," he stated softly, "but I'm a swift study, and I refuse to let Dreyer prevail without an exceptionally fierce resistance." A subtle alteration occurred in her gaze, perhaps surprise or the nascent spark of genuine admiration. "Then we have a substantial amount of preparation to undertake in a very limited span of time." The first light of dawn crested the mountain stronghold, bathing the somber stone in hues of amber. Within the ancient arena where Riker had first witnessed Lorathi in combat, a multitude of KT Valyrians assembled to observe the culmination of 3 trials. The atmosphere was thick with an electric sense of anticipation. Never before had an outsider attempted these trials, and the overwhelming majority of observers fully expected to witness a spectacle of utter humiliation. Riker stood at the perimeter of the combat zone, attired in a modified Enver fighting ensemble. The customary armor had been expertly altered to accommodate his broader human physique, its deep violet fabric adorned with intricate silver clan insignia. Beside him, Lorathi meticulously adjusted his protective armbands. "Do you recall our practice?" she inquired in a hushed tone. "Keith Valyrian combatants depend on swiftness and precision. They will anticipate you fighting like a typical human, all raw power and no subtlety. Consequently, I shall surprise them," Riker responded, flexing his fingers around the grip of the practice sword. Despite his confident assertion, his mouth felt parched. A single night of intensive training seemed utterly insufficient to prepare him for the ordeal ahead. Lorathi's fingers briefly rested on his arm. "You are not obligated to proceed. We might still discover an alternative." "There is no alternative," he replied gently, "and you are aware of that. Furthermore, I have weathered far more perilous circumstances." Her expression suggested doubt, yet she inclined her head. "Then may your ancestors offer guidance to your weapon." A horn blast signaled the commencement of the trial. As Dreyer advanced from the opposite end of the arena, accompanied by a KE Valyrian male, nearly matching his own imposing stature, and clad in resplendent crimson battle armor. "For the initial challenge," Dreyer announced to the assembled gathering, "I present Korax, the third blade of Clan Keth, who remains undefeated in 17 ceremonial duels." A wave of murmurs swept through the throng. Riker exchanged a glance with Larathi, whose countenance had become noticeably strained. "He has selected their premier close-quarters combat specialist," she murmured. "Korax is renowned for his ability to incapacitate opponents rather than dispatch them. This is considered a more refined skill." "Marvelous," Riker grumbled. "So he'll simply cripple me instead of finishing the task." The High Elder stepped forward. "The stipulations of combat are straightforward. The engagement concludes when one participant surrenders or is rendered unconscious. Lethal force is strictly prohibited." She fixed Korax with a stern look regarding this final point, an indication that she fully comprehended Dreyer's deliberate choice. Riker moved into the designated area, facing his adversary. Korax loomed over him, all four of his eyes narrowed in keen observation. "I have never engaged a human in combat before," he stated, his voice surprisingly melodious given his size. "I am told your kind bleeds red. I eagerly anticipate confirming this." "Happy to disabuse you of that notion," Riker countered, adopting the defensive posture Larathi had painstakingly drilled into him throughout the preceding night. The horn sounded once more, and Korax launched his attack with astonishing speed. Only Riker's combat instincts, honed through years of mercenary service, prevented him from being immediately overwhelmed. He parried the initial thrust and sidestepped, effectively leveraging the alien's own momentum against him. Korax recovered with remarkable alacrity, spinning with an almost inhuman fluidity to unleash another assault. This time, his blade bypassed Riker's guard, inflicting a shallow gash across his ribs. A collective gasp arose from the crowd at the sight of crimson blood seeping through the violet fabric. "First blood awarded to Kith," Dreyer proclaimed with evident smugness. Riker circled cautiously, re-evaluating his formidable opponent. Larathi had been correct. Attempting to match a Keth Valyrian in sheer speed and precision would be tantamount to suicide. He needed to engage like a human, but with superior intellect. The next time Korax lunged, Riker abandoned any attempt at parrying. Instead, he moved into the attack, accepting a glancing blow to his shoulder in exchange for infiltrating the alien's defensive perimeter. Before Korax could react, Riker forcefully slammed his forehead directly into the bridge of the Keth Valyrian's nose. This was a decidedly unconventional maneuver that sent a gush of indigo bloodspring. A stunned silence descended upon the arena, quickly followed by indignant shouts emanating from Clan Keth's designated seating area. "Dishonorable conduct," someone bellowed. "Unacceptable," the High Elder's voice cut through the rising clamor. "Unconventional, perhaps, but entirely within the established parameters of combat." Korax wiped his face, his expression shifting from one of surprise to a grudging respect. "So, humans do possess a certain fighting spirit." The contest continued, each combatant adapting to the other's distinct fighting style. Riker sustained additional lacerations but delivered several solid impacts of his own, employing a blend of Larathi's tutelage and the street fighting techniques he had acquired across a dozen different worlds. As minutes evolved into half an hour, both fighters began to exhibit signs of fatigue. In the spectator stands, Riker observed Larathi watching intently, her posture rigid with apprehension. The unwavering conviction in her eyes provided him with a surge of renewed determination. When Korax unleashed what should have been an overwhelming barrage of strikes, Riker discovered reserves of strength he had not previously known he possessed. Ducking beneath a horizontal sweep, he dropped his sword, grasped Korax's wrist with both hands, and utilized the alien's own momentum to execute a throw, flipping him over his shoulder. A rudimentary human grappling technique that no Keth Valyrian would ever anticipate. Korax crashed to the ground with a bone-jarring impact, and before he could recover his footing, Riker had retrieved his blade and positioned it at the alien's throat. "Yield!" he gasped. For a fleeting moment, Korax's 4 eyes blazed with defiance. Then, astonishingly, he offered a smile. I yield to the human bondmate of Environ. The arena erupted in a cacophony of cheers and astonished exclamations. Riker extended his hand, assisting Korax to his feet in a gesture that clearly surprised the Keth Valyrian warrior. You fight in an unusual manner, Korax acknowledged, but effectively. Drakar's face was a mask of barely suppressed fury as the High Elder stepped forward. The first challenge is concluded. Riker Voss has demonstrated his physical aptitude. She turned to Riker. Rest now. The second challenge commences at midday. As he exited the combat circle, Larathi intercepted him at the arena's edge, her eyes shining with an emotion he couldn't quite decipher. That was, she began, entirely improvised. Your instruction was invaluable, he finished with a weary grin, but I surmised my best strategy was to catch him off guard. You certainly achieved that. A smile played on her lips. I have never witnessed anyone headbutt a KE champion before. A first for everything. He winced as the adrenaline subsided, bringing into sharp focus his numerous cuts and contusions. In a private chamber adjoining the arena, Larathi meticulously cleaned and dressed his injuries. Her touch was initially professional but gradually softened as she worked. Riker found himself captivated by the shifting emotions playing across her face. Concern, relief, and something deeper that caused his pulse to quicken, entirely unrelated to the recent combat. I harbored doubts about your victory, she admitted quietly, applying a soothing balm to a wound on his shoulder. Thank you for your vote of confidence. It is not a matter of confidence. Her fingers lingered on his skin. Korax has overcome adversaries with decades more training than you possess. Your performance out there was extraordinary. Riker gently clasped her hand before she could withdraw it. Perhaps your ancestors possessed foresight when that blade chose me. Their gazes met, and for an instant the air between them seemed charged with unspoken possibilities. Larathi's eyes drifted to his lips, then back to his, a blush of deeper violet spreading across her cheeks. The moment was abruptly shattered by a sharp rap on the door. The second challenge begins in 20 minutes, a voice announced. Larathi pulled away, her composure reasserting itself with seamless efficiency. We must prepare. The trial of intellect will prove even more demanding for you than the combat. As she turned to gather the materials they had meticulously prepared throughout the night, Riker gently caught her wrist. Larathi, she looked back, a flicker of vulnerability momentarily crossing her features. Thank you, he said simply, for believing in me, even when you doubted my ability to win. Something softened in her expression. Perhaps I am beginning to grasp the reasons why the Blade selected you after all. The High Elder regained her composure first. The trial is complete. Riker Voss has successfully navigated all 3 challenges. By ancient decree and the will of the ancestors, he is affirmed as the rightful husband of Larathi Inverin and a true scion of her lineage. A cheer erupted from the small contingent of Inverin sympathizers, quickly joined by members of Clanthal and even representatives from lesser houses. Drakar's visage contorted with barely contained fury. However, even he could not contest the Blade's transformation, a symbolic affirmation more potent than any council ruling. As the formal ceremony concluded, Riker carefully returned the sword to its altar, his mind still processing the profound communion he had experienced. The assembled witnesses departed, leaving only Larathi and Riker within the hallowed chamber. What transpired? She inquired softly, approaching him with an expression of pure wonder. The Blade has never reacted in such a fashion to anyone in recorded history. Riker ran a hand through his hair, struggling to articulate the overwhelming experience. I perceived them. All of them. Your ancestors. Your father. Larathi's breath hitched. My father spoke to you. He conveyed, the Invar lineage holds heart paramount above all else. Riker took her hands in his, and I believe I finally comprehend the significance of that sentiment. Within the ethereal blue luminescence of the crystal, Larathi's violet skin acquired an otherworldly quality. Her silver hair, released from its intricate arrangement, cascaded around her shoulders. Riker had found her captivating from the very first moment he saw her engaged in combat within the arena. But now, Observing the interplay of her vulnerability and her inherent strength, he perceived her as utterly mesmerizing. "Larathi," he murmured, "I did not actively seek this union, but had I known you then as I know you now, I would have embraced it by choice." Her eyes widened, flecks of silver shimmering within their depths. "You cannot possibly mean that. Our customs are not your customs. Our world is not your world. Perhaps that is precisely why the blade chose me." He stepped closer. "Perhaps on occasion, we require someone who perceives matters from a different perspective." For a moment she remained perfectly still. Then, with the decisiveness that characterized all her actions, Larathi closed the intervening distance and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was tentative initially, a crossing of boundaries neither had anticipated traversing. Then, a palpable spark ignited between them, a recognition that transcended their disparate physical natures. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. "That was," Riker began. "Not a traditional Kethvalian greeting," she concluded with unexpected humor, a smile gracing the corners of her mouth. "I would dislike being overly conventional," he murmured, drawing her back into his embrace. This time, their kiss deepened, awakening sensations that had been building since their initial encounter. The world around them seemed to recede, leaving only the two of them enveloped in a bubble of blue light amidst the ancient stone. When they finally disengaged, Larathi's expression had undergone a profound transformation. Gone was the guarded warrior, replaced by a woman whose desires mirrored his own. "Come," she said, taking his hand. "We have much to discuss in private." Within Larathi's chambers they conversed for hours, delving into the intricacies of their respective worlds, their pasts, and their aspirations. With each revelation, the chasm between them diminished. As night deepened, their discourse gradually gave way to more intimate exchanges. Touches evolved into caresses. Words softened into whispers. "Are you certain?" Riker inquired as they stood on the precipice of irrevocable change. "Our customs, your customs, they have already made you my husband," she reminded him, her fingers tracing the contour of his jaw. "Now, I choose to make you my mate, in truth." What ensued was a communion as profound as Riker's experience with the blade, a joining not merely of bodies, but of spirits. They moved in unison within the ancient dance of passion, discovering how their differences served to enhance, rather than impede, their connection. Together they forged a harmony that neither had previously encountered. Afterward, as they lay entwined in the soft glow of Keith Valor's twin moons, Larathi traced the battle scars adorning Riker's chest with gentle fingers. "The elders assert that when two bloodlines exhibit true compatibility, the union can engender offspring possessing the strengths of both," she murmured. "However, such interspecies unions are exceedingly rare." Riker clasped her hand, bringing it to his lips. "Your father seemed to believe our connection was predestined. Perhaps there is more to this compatibility than we currently comprehend." She smiled, a trace of mischief dancing in her eyes. "Perhaps we should subject this hypothesis to thorough testing." Weeks elapsed, and with Riker officially recognized as Larathi's husband, the political landscape began to undergo a significant shift. Clanthal extended a formal alliance. Numerous smaller houses pledged their allegiance. Even Korax, the warrior Riker had bested, commenced regular training sessions with him, developing a combat style that artfully blended human and Keth Valyrian methodologies. Only Dreyer remained overtly hostile, though even he was compelled to acknowledge the legitimacy of Riker's established position. The immediate threat posed to Clan Nun's territories had been effectively neutralized. One morning, Riker awoke to find Larathi already attired and standing by the window, her expression unreadable. "What is amiss?" he asked, instantly alert. She turned towards him, her hand resting lightly on her abdomen. "Nothing is amiss, but something unforeseen has occurred." Riker sat up, now fully awake. "Are you?" "Yes." Her voice was soft, imbued with a sense of wonder. "Our bloodlines are indeed compatible, my husband. I carry your child, our child, within me." The news struck Riker with the force of a physical blow. Throughout his extensive travels across the stars, he had never envisioned himself as a father, let alone the father of a child destined to bridge two distinct worlds. That's... He searched for words, finding only inadequate expressions. Amazing. Incredible. Larathi moved to the bedside, taking his hands in hers. It is unprecedented. There has never been a child born of human and Keth Valyrian lineage. Our son or daughter will be the first of their kind. How can you be so certain it is even feasible, Riker inquired, that the pregnancy will progress without complication? The clan healers have offered their confirmation. The child is already developing robustly. Her eyes met his, suddenly filled with a delicate vulnerability. Are you pleased? In response, Riker drew her into his arms, holding her with a tenderness that conveyed what words could not articulate. I never imagined I would have a family, he confessed, his voice muffled against her silver hair. You have given me something I did not even realize I desired. As they held each other in the gentle morning light, neither could have foreseen how their offspring would soon become the focal point of a tempest that would irrevocably transform not only their own lives, but the very destiny of Kethabella. The tidings of Larathi's unprecedented gestation spread through the clans with the speed of wildfire. What had initially been perceived as a curiosity, a human assuming the role of a clan husband, had now escalated into a phenomenon that fundamentally challenged the established societal structures of Keth Valyrian civilization. A child bearing the dual heritage of two distinct worlds, possessing both human and Kethalarian ancestry, had never before been conceived. Many regarded the pregnancy as a divine miracle, a tangible sign of favor bestowed by the ancestors. Conversely, a significant segment of the population, particularly those loyal to Dreyer, viewed it as an abomination, a threat to the cherished purity of their bloodlines. The debate raged fiercely in council chambers and common dwellings alike. For Riker and Larathi, however, the pressing political ramifications receded in importance compared to more immediate concerns. As her pregnancy advanced, Larathi's body underwent transformations that baffled even the most experienced Keth Valyrian healers. The fetus developed at a pace exceeding that of a typical Keth Valyrian gestation, yet slower than that of a human one, exhibiting unique characteristics that clearly reflected both parental lineages. The healers indicate that all is progressing favorably, Larathi reported one evening as they sat in their private garden, observing the ascent of Kethalar's twin moons above the mountain peaks. Her hand rested upon her distended abdomen, where the distinct outline of their active offspring was occasionally visible. Riker placed his hand alongside hers, marveling at the vigorous kicks against his palm. He will be a fighter, much like his mother, she countered with a smile. Or perhaps a wanderer, akin to his father. Regardless, he will forge his own unique path. Riker raised an eyebrow. You are certain it is a boy? Larathi nodded. The healers confirmed it earlier today. A son of Invar and of Earth. Their tranquil moment was abruptly interrupted by the arrival of Melis, a young Environ guard. The High Elder requests your immediate presence in the council chamber. Clan Kaith has convened an emergency session. As they made their way towards the chamber, Riker observed a notable increase in security measures throughout the fortress. Guards from Clanthal stood shoulder to shoulder with soldiers at critical junctures, a demonstration of alliance that would have been utterly inconceivable mere months prior. The chamber was already filled to capacity upon their arrival. Dreyer stood prominently in the center, clutching a weathered scroll case in his massive hands. The human and his consort. Dreyer's voice dripped with a thinly veiled contempt. How fortunate that you arrived precisely as we were discussing the abomination gestating within her. Riker stepped forward, anger flaring, but Larathi placed a restraining hand on his arm. Choose your subsequent words with extreme caution, Dreyer, she stated, her voice carrying clearly through the assembled crowd. You speak of the heir to our clan. An heir? Dreyer scoffed harshly. Or the fulfillment of the prophecy of dissolution? He raised the scroll case. This text, unearthed from the ancient archives, speaks of a time when blood from beyond the stars mingles with the blood of the first clans, heralding the end of the ancient ways. The High Elder stepped forward. May I examine this prophecy? Reluctantly, Dreyer surrendered the scroll. After several minutes of silent perusal, the High Elder looked up. Dreyer has selectively quoted from this text, she announced. The full passage reads, When blood from beyond the stars mingles with the blood of the first clans, the child born of this union shall herald the end of the old ways of division and strife. In this child's hands, the blades of many houses shall become one, and a new age of unity shall dawn." The chamber erupted in a chorus of exclamations. Dreyer's face contorted with incandescent fury. "You twist the words to suit their narrative." "I read that which is inscribed," the High Elder replied calmly. "And there is more. The prophecy continues. The blade of the oldest house shall choose the star blood bearer, recognizing in him the heart that can heal our fractured world." All eyes turned towards the transformed and now barren blade, worn conspicuously at Riker's hip, the blade that had chosen him, the blade that had subsequently altered to incorporate both Keth Valyrian and human symbols. "This cannot be mere coincidence," the Thal representative interjected. "The human, the blade, the child, all foretold." "Superstitious nonsense," Dreyer roared. "Would you entrust the future of our world to a half-breed child and its alien father based on ancient scribblings?" "We would follow the will of the ancestors," another elder countered firmly, "as we have always done." As the debate intensified, Larathi suddenly gasped, doubling over. Riker caught her, alarm surging through him as he witnessed the agonizing pain etched upon her face. "The child," she whispered. "He is coming." The council's deliberations were instantly forgotten as Riker swept Larathi into his arms and rushed from the chamber, closely pursued by Marine guards and the clan's chief healer. Hours later, within the sacred birthing chamber, Larathi endured a labor that tested even her formidable warrior strength. Riker remained steadfastly at her side throughout the ordeal, his hand nearly crushed in her grip as contractions racked her body. When their son finally entered the world, his initial cry echoed through the ancient stone halls with surprising power. The healers swiftly cleaned him, then placed him in Larathi's arms, a perfect synthesis of both parents. His complexion was a lighter shade of violet than his mother's, with delicate hints of human pink. Wisps of silvery white hair adorned his head, but when his eyes briefly opened, their structure was unmistakably human, though flecked with silver, much like Lorathi's. Then Lorathi whispered, "After my father." Then Riker and Van. Their private moment was shattered by a disturbance outside. The doors burst inward, revealing Korax with blood trickling from a gash above his eyes. "Drar has made his move," he gasped. "He claims the prophecy is a fabrication and demands the child be examined by Keth healers to confirm its viability. But his true motives are obvious." Riker surged to his feet, positioning himself between the doorway and his family. "He'll have to get past me first." "And me," Korax affirmed. "I stand with Enverin on this, as do others." Indeed, behind Korax stood not only members of the vanguards but also warriors from Clanthal, and even some clad in Kethal colors, those who had chosen to defy Drar's increasingly desperate power grab. "The High Elder has decreed sanctuary for the child," Korax continued, "but Drar refuses to acknowledge her authority." Lorathi attempted to sit up, still weary from childbirth. "Help me stand, Rekka. I will not face this threat lying down." "You need to rest." "I need to protect our son," she interrupted with firm resolve. Understanding the futility of arguing with her, Riker assisted her to her feet. She swayed slightly but regained her balance, cradling Theon protectively against her. They did not have to wait long. Dreyer's voice boomed from the corridor, demanding entry. When the doors opened once more, he stood there with a dozen armed warriors, his face a mask of righteous indignation. "The abomination must be examined," he declared, "for the safety of all Keth Velar." "My son is not an abomination," Lorathi replied, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "He is the heir to the clan of Aaron, the fulfillment of prophecy." "A convenient prophecy that appeared just when you needed it," Dreer sneered. "A prophecy written ages before any of us were born," came another voice. The High Elder entered, flanked by representatives from every major and minor clan. "A prophecy that speaks of unity, not division." Drar's gaze swept the room, noting how outnumbered his faction had become. "You would all follow this outsider? This human who knows nothing of our ways?" "This human who passed every trial you set before him," Korax pointed out. This human who has brought more honor to his adopted clan in months than you have brought to Keth in years. This human who loves his wife and son, Riker added quietly, and will do whatever it takes to protect them. Something shifted in Drakkar's expression, a realization perhaps, that he had miscalculated, that in his fixation on tradition and purity, he had failed to see how the winds of change were already sweeping through Keith Valor. The child will unite the clans, the High Elder stated firmly. Not today, perhaps, but in time. The prophecy is clear, and the ancestors have shown their will through the blade's choice. For a long moment, the chamber hung in a precarious balance. Then, with a growl of frustration, Drakkar lowered his weapon. "This is not over," he warned, but the threat sounded hollow, even to his own ears. "It is over," the High Elder corrected. "The Council has voted. Clan Keth will accept the legitimacy of the Norvar heir, or Clan Keth will stand alone." Faced with the united opposition of every other clan, Drea had no recourse but to withdraw. As his followers filed out, the tension in the room gradually dissipated, replaced by a hopeful optimism. "Well," Riker said, turning back to Lorothy and their son, "that was quite a welcome to the world, little one." Lithy smiled wearily. "He is his father's son already, bringing change wherever he goes." 1 year later, Riker stood on the highest balcony of the Naran fortress, watching as ships from Earth descended through Kethalar's atmosphere, the first official diplomatic delegation from the human worlds. In his arms, Theon babbled with excitement, pointing at the fiery contrails with tiny violet fingers. "Yes, those are from where Daddy comes from," Riker explained, "and someday, we'll take you there to see it." Lorathi joined them, her silver hair now adorned with the formal markings of a clan leader. The past year had brought remarkable transformations to Kethalar. The prophecy, coupled with the undeniable reality of Theon's healthy development, had shifted centuries of isolationist thinking. Under the joint leadership of Wrecker and Lorathi, Clan Baron had spearheaded a new era of cooperation among the clans. Even Drakkar, after months of resistance, had eventually accepted the new reality, particularly after Korax challenged and replaced him as head of Clan Keith in a surprisingly bloodless transition of power. "Are you nervous?" Lorothy asked, slipping her arm around Wrecker's waist. "About introducing my alien wife and half-alien son to my former commanding officer?" "Not at all," he replied with a grin that belied his words. In the Great Hall, representatives from all the clans had gathered for the historic meeting. The Earth delegation, led by Admiral Charles, entered with fitting ceremony, though Riker noted the barely concealed amazement in their eyes as they took in the ancient architecture and the violet-skinned Keith Valyrians. "Captain Voss," Admiral Charles greeted him with a crisp salute, which quickly melted into a genuine smile. "When you disappeared on what was supposed to be a routine refueling stop, I never expected to find you married to an alien clan leader with a half-human son." "Life takes unexpected turns, Admiral," Riker replied, returning the salute before clasping the older man's hand. "May I present Lorathi and Von, my wife and co-leader of Clan and Von, and our son, Theon." The Admiral's eyes widened as he took in the child, undeniably a blend of both species, yet somehow harmonious rather than discordant. "Remarkable," he murmured. "Truly remarkable." Later, as the diplomatic reception wound down, Riker found himself alone with Admiral Charles in one of the fortress's ancient courtyards. "You've done something extraordinary here, Voss," the Admiral said, "something none of our xenobiologists thought possible." "I just picked up a sword," Riker shrugged. "Everything else followed from that one moment. Sometimes that's all it takes. One moment of courage that changes everything." The Admiral turned to him. "The Alliance is very interested in establishing permanent relations with Cath Valor. Your son represents possibilities we never considered." "He's not a science experiment," Riker said firmly. "Of course not," Charles agreed quickly. "But he is living proof that our species are more compatible than anyone imagined, and that has profound implications for the future." Riker nodded slowly. "Larry and I have discussed this. We want Theon to know both worlds, both his heritages, and we want him to be the first of many bridges between our peoples, not the only one." "Then we are in agreement." The Admiral smiled. "The Alliance is prepared to offer KET Valor full diplomatic recognition and trade privileges. In return, we ask only for cultural exchange and the opportunity to learn from each other." When the Earth delegation finally departed for their temporary quarters, Riker and Larathi retreated to their private chambers, where they placed their sleeping son in his crib, a beautiful creation crafted from earth oak and inlaid with Keth Valyrian silver. "Your admiral seems wise," Larathi observed. "I believe this alliance will benefit both our peoples." "He is," Riker agreed. "And he's right about one thing. What we've created here is extraordinary." He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Not just the political alliance, but this United States." Theon Lathi turned in his embrace, her eyes reflecting the soft light from the crystal lamps. "When you first wielded my clan's sword, I thought you had ruined everything. Now I understand that you saved everything. Not just my life, but my clan's future." "But we saved it together," he corrected gently. "And we'll build that future together, one day at a time." As they stood in the quiet of their chambers, another transformed clan blade hanging on the wall nearby seemed to pulse with a subtle light, as if the ancestors themselves were offering their blessing to this new chapter in the ancient story of Keth valor. Outside, the twin moons cast their silver glow over the mountain fortress, illuminating a world forever changed by one human's impulsive act of courage and the unexpected love that followed. In the crib, Theon Riker Invar, heir to two worlds and harbinger of a new age, slept peacefully, unaware of the legacy he embodied or the future he represented. But his parents knew, as did all who had witnessed his birth and the union that created him. Some bonds transcend worlds, and some destinies are written in the stars long before we recognize them. For Riker, who had once been a ruthless wanderer among those stars, the greatest adventure of his life had begun the moment he grasped a sword to protect a stranger. Now, as husband to Lathi and father to Theon, he had found not just a clan, but a home, and a purpose greater than any he could have imagined. And it had all started because he wielded her clan's sword to protect her, oblivious that he now had to become her husband.